So how many times does this happen? You need to make a dado for a shelf and you do have a pattern bit for your router, but it's not the same size as your shelf. That's actually a pretty common problem, especially because generally speaking, you're going to be making the shelf out of plywood, or it's a good chance you are. Plywood's not actually the same size as what it's rated. It tends to be a little bit smaller than that, especially if you have a router bit that's the exact same size, it's just not going to fit. In this case, I actually have the exact opposite. This particular router bit tends to fit plywood fairly well, like 3/4 inch plywood, but this is an MDF, which is actually 3/4 inch, so this ends up being smaller than this. Well, no problem. As long as your dado is at least a little bit smaller than your shelf, we can actually make a jig that exploits the pattern part of that out of just scrap wood. That'll give you perfect dados every time. You need 3 scrap pieces for this. The flat piece is used both as a template for the pattern bit and as a base for the router. It just needs to be longer than the width of the shelf support piece and wide enough to support the router. The other 2 pieces are long, straight boards that are used as side fences. I made mine both from one piece of leftover pine that I just ripped in half. I wouldn't use pine since it ends up moving too much. Something more dimensionally stable like plywood or MDF would work better. The first assembly step is most important. The first template piece absolutely must be perpendicular to the side fence. Press the side fence to the shelf support and square up the template piece to it. Then drive in 1 screw in the corner that allows it to pivot. When you're absolutely sure that it's perfectly at 90 degrees, drive in a 2nd screw just to secure it into place. The second step is to attach the second side fence. This should naturally be parallel to the first fence and already 90 degrees to the template piece, so it's mostly just put it in position and screwing it in place. Next up is making this a truly custom jig that fits one specific shelf thickness. Use a scrap piece of the actual shelf for this. Sandwich the scrap piece lightly between the 2 template sides. This ensures that the 2 template sides are parallel and precisely the width of the shelf. Secure the second template piece into place. And that's it. You now have a functional jig that makes a perfect fit dado every time. The routing technique is to go up one side of the template with the pattern bit and then down the other side. This is why it's important for the bit to be slightly smaller than the actual dado. To use the template, start by marking off the bottom of the dado and then position one side of the template on it. There should be no need to clamp it into place. Make sure to zero out the depth gauge on your router to the thickness of the template before setting the dado depth. Route around the template clockwise. I recommend making a couple of shallow cuts, since as you can see in this video, making one pass generates far more dust than can be handled by a shop vac. The cut is cleaner with multiple passes too. Remove your jig to reveal your perfect fit dado. This jig is easy enough to make to justify a one-time use only, but a big advantage is the ability to repeat this dado multiple times and for it to be perfect each time. See you next time.